Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Ipsos Media Summit. My name is Audra Preluck, and I am the head of revenue activation for the Ipsos Media Development team, and I'll be your host today. We have 5 comprehensive sessions scheduled, plus one very special keynote presentation. Now, with all of those housekeeping items behind us, it is my pleasure to welcome Christie Kawada, Ipsos's Head of Media Research, who will begin our Media Summit today with a few opening words. Christie, please start us off.
Thank you, Audra. So good morning and good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Christie Kawada, Head of Media at Ipsos North America, and I'm so happy to introduce you and welcome you to today's annual Media Summit. We have so much fun and thoughtful discussions ahead, so thank you in advance, everybody, for joining. So before I bring out the stars of our show today, let me just set the stage. And I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to spend some time going down memory lane for some of you. So for music, in the music world, who remembers some stores like Coconuts, Tower Records, Sam Goody? How many of you know what I mean when I say listening to a 45? I used to sit down in my bedroom literally for hours, just listening to music, no screens, right? No other distractions, just music. Does anyone still do that? In the TV world, I grew up in front of the bunny ears, sitting, with the dinner trays, eating dinner with the family. And we couldn't miss an episode of our favorite show that was scheduled for a certain time. I'm also going to ask who remembers TiVo? I mean, did that not change your life or what? Because that completely changed my life. I think I still have my TiVo in the garage. So, and finally, like TV on demand, time shifted at your own time. It just makes a world of difference. And finally, with movies, think how far this industry has shifted, right? At one point, seeing a movie was a real big event, right? A Friday night event, a Saturday night event, whether it be, a drive-in theater or even a regular movie theater. You had to buy tickets in advance. Now you have to choose your seats, right? To all the concessions. And then unfortunately, really back in the day, most movies didn't make it back to TV. So it really was a privileged piece of content. But then VHS, DVDs came into the business model, followed by the new rental model, Blockbuster. I don't know if you guys remember them, but used to be there every Friday night. And better yet, Netflix, right? A household name right now, but maybe some of you don't remember that Netflix started with physically mailed DVDs to your home. So now a couple words for you, right? Subscriptions, streaming, and IP. If consumers have the money and they're willing to pay for it, we can now basically get an endless library, access at any time, from anything from books and music and podcasts, TV shows, movies, video games, so much content, right? So much media. So you just pick what service or platform, and then you pick what subscription tier you're willing to pay for, and then there you have it right in your home. So next slide, please. Each of these significant shifts have ultimately changed the consumer mindset to an evolving consumer that has been trained to demand more convenience, to the point of never having to leave the house, right, to consume any type of media, greater accessibility, being able to access media across multiple devices and even multiple platforms and services. So like you no longer need a physical record player or a radio to listen to music, right? And you don't need an actual television now to watch TV. The new consumer also demands endless variety all in one place. You don't need to travel to multiple stores to get that latest, single or movie that's been sold out, and you don't have to go to the theater, right, to watch a sold out premiere. Today's consumers, this new world, especially during COVID and post-COVID, couldn't be better. The best of all media, all at the touch of their fingertips. And as long as you're willing to pay for it, consumers young and old across ethnicities have all, proven they're willing to pay for this content. But for businesses and brands like yours, how have these new business models and consumer mindsets changed what products you develop, how successful they are, how you market, what channels you market on, and how you target your new consumers? So in practice, for most of you on this call, does that mean the research that you've done, like the consumer segmentation that you ran 2 years ago, still applies? In most of your media spend, is it still split between linear and digital? So even with consumers post-COVID having more time in general, do you find that they are less receptive to advertising since they can basically pay to get no advertising now? So how are businesses successfully adapting to these new business models and the consumers? And this is what all of the different sessions today will be addressing. So here's what our latest data is telling us around content brands. So back in 2015, the most loved television and content brands were newer brands like Netflix and YouTube, so that's no surprise. But we also had more traditional linear brands like HBO, ABC, and History Channel coming up to the top. If you fast forward to 2021, all of those favorite linear brands have now fully been replaced by streaming brands. So really changes in preferences, changes in the way people are consuming media. So again, Netflix and YouTube still lead the way, but now they're followed by all subscription streaming brands like Amazon Prime Video, Disney Plus, which is completely new to the mix, already at the top, and Hulu. So for those of you who still have a cable subscription or access to live TV, you'll quickly see there are some major differences in ad formats in the streaming world, again, with some not even having advertising. So how have all these changes in preferences and consumption behavior impacted perceptions to advertising? The story is actually a fairly positive one. So, at the top, while you see in red, in terms of consumers just noticing ads in the last 30 days, newer ad platforms are up, such as podcasts, social media, and gaming, and that's the positive side to this story. But as more positive sides, you can also see that consumer attitudes are up, right? The better the advertising, the more consumers think it's a better product. And so it's really linked to that. Consumers are more interested in ads that they find interesting. So next slide, please. So now as we go into today's Media Summit, I'm happy to introduce an array of Ipsos's subject matter experts who will talk to you not only about their unique research offerings, but how they leverage their products and data to help their clients navigate in this new world. So quickly in session one, we're kicking off our exciting day, and we'll start with the true behind the scenes. Let's get up close and personal, look at the people who produce and create the magic that we watch on TV or our subscription services or even in the theater. Well, that will then be followed by our keynote speaker, Lori Schwartz, who is CEO of Storytech. She'll be sharing her secret to branding and marketing and how she creates experiences to bring brands to life. In session two, following Lori, our qual experts will be taking us on a journey of media consumption across the generations. In session three, our brand health tracking and social intelligence experts will unpack the power of today's creators and what that means for brands today. Session four, our creative excellence team will talk about the fragmented state of digital advertising and the overall future perspective of digital. Session five, lastly, we will end our day with a thoughtful discussion around what it's like to survive and succeed in today's metaverse. And with that, I will hand it over to my beautiful colleague, Audra Preluk, who is our, as she mentioned, Head of Revenue Activation for Media at Ipsos.
Thank you, Christie. And thank you to everybody for joining in the fun today. For those of you just coming in, my name is Audra Preluk. I'm the SVP and Head of Revenue Activation for the Ipsos Media Development Team. It's my pleasure to get the party started with our first session. today called Creating the New Addiction, the experts behind the TV shows of 2021. Joining me now is my illustrious colleague, Tom Grayman, who's the SVP of Content Strategy and Audience Measurement for the Ipsos Media Development Team. This gentleman has lived and breathed media for more than 25 years and has literally seen it all. Hello, Tom.
Hello, Audra. Thank you for that glowing introduction.
I'm really glad that you could join us to start the session. So earlier, Christie Kawada was talking about three big things that have significantly changed the consumer mindset. One, subscriptions. Two, streaming. And three, IP, intellectual property. So what are some of the key trends that you're seeing that are driving this viewing evolution?
So, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot about during the pandemic is the increase in TV usage. And it's true that television usage did show a bump up in 2020 due to the pandemic. But the truth is the longer term trend, if you go looking over a few years now, is that overall television usage is relatively flat. And so the question is, it may be on a slight decline. So the question is, if there's slight decline, are those losses being distributed evenly around the different formats? And the answer is no.
We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, thank you, because my clicker is not working here.
Yep, and now to the next one.
So what we're looking at here is numbers of SVOD, which stands for subscription video on demand, meaning streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime Video that you pay for, and AVOD, advertising video on demand, streaming services that are free like IMDb TV or Crackle or Pluto TV. And we're looking at the numbers used per household on a regular basis. And so we can see that while overall television usage, as I said before, has been relatively flat over the last few years, without a question, streaming service usage has been on the incline. And so one of the questions that should be of interest to all of us is, what exactly is driving this? And there are many drivers that can be pointed to and can be discussed, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, a bit in our session with our guests. But one interesting driver that probably doesn't get as much attention as it deserves to can be found on the next slide, and that is the presence of children, right? And so what you're looking at here on the horizontal axis is number of SVOD and AVOD streaming services used, and the percentages are the percentages of each group, the childless and the child dead, who use that number of streaming services. So if you look at the none bucket on the left, clearly that's driven by the childless. You come over a bit, particularly when you get into the 3 to 5 zone, 3 to 5 streaming services used per household. You can see that's clearly, that those are the households with kids. And if we think about it, this of course makes a lot of sense. Everyone who has kids or has had young kids knows the challenge of keeping them entertained, and parents will spend quite a bit, if necessary, to keep that going. So although it's not something that's talked about as much as a driver of streaming services, subscriptions and usage, it clearly shows itself here. And this data comes from research that we had recently done at Ipsos for our What the Future series.
Oh, there's no question there. Focus group of one. I mean, we are definitely in that 6 to 9 streaming service category with all the content that my sons are watching right now. I feel like they are constantly coming to me with, "Oh, Mom, I want to watch this new show. I've got to get it, but it's on this service. We got to get it." And so I'm just doling out cash, basically. That's what's happening there. Such a great way to lay this out.
And so with the increase in usage of streaming services, there has been and is much discussed a growth in binge watching, which is to say watching 2 or by some definitions 3 episodes of television series in one sitting. And so in the industry, across the industry, there's an assumption that this is basically what consumers want. That this is the big movement that consumers want is the ability to binge watch and maybe even watch an entire season in one sitting if they have the endurance for it. The interesting thing is we have research on our next slide, which shows that actually the audience is fairly well split in terms of their preferences as to whether or not they like to have their television episodes available all at once, full season all at once, giving them the option to binge, or whether they like to keep seeing them doled out week by week. There is still something to be said for the anticipation factor and the sort of scheduled and co-viewing opportunities that come when something is scheduled, when episodes are released on a weekly and regularly scheduled cadence.
This is a great spot. As everyone can see, this is a great spot for us to have our very first poll question of the day. How do you feel about shows on streaming platforms not being available all at once? So if you click the answer that you feel best represents, your opinion. Are you okay with it? The fact that that all the episodes aren't all being dropped at once anymore. Do you wish you could binge all the episodes in one sitting? Do you feel like I'll just wait till all the episodes are available? Or are you in the camp of, I won't commit to watching until the show's been renewed for another season? So, everyone, please, pick the answer you think best represents, how you feel about that right now.
And while everyone's working on that, we can talk about an interesting corollary finding in this research. So evenly split, the audience is saying between give it to me all at once or give it to me weekly. But actually, if you dig down into the demographics of it, you do find some differences. And we see that on the next slide, where we see the differences are generational, right? And so on the left, that big block in yellow, those millennials are the ones really driving the desire to have their content available all at once, the full season all at once. Whereas on the right, that blue block, the boomer generation, those are the ones driving the weekly episodic releases. So, it does seem to be that there is the weekly approach perhaps is fading as that generation passes on. But the point is, it is not dead, right? It is still vibrant, and not just for that generation, but particular generation. That weekly approach is still vibrant, and so that is worth thinking about as we talk about and think about how television shows are written and produced and marketed.
Absolutely. Oh my God, Tom, what's old is new again when it comes to scheduling for TV episodics, right? That weekly episode drip when, it was the opposite, right? So when streaming first started, we adjusted our viewing pattern to binge watch because all the episodes were available at once, right? And so you hear stories about people who are like, oh my God, I started watching at 9 p.m. and I ended up not going to bed, right? So you hear about those stories, people that just stay up all night to watch entire seasons. But now we're back to this weekly episodic drip, which is way more in line with what boomers and Gen Xers, really in essence, grew up with, right? Knowing the exact day or potentially the time that an episode's going to drop, which is really interesting. So yeah, there's for sure that generational shift.
Right. So while we're waiting for the results of that poll to come in, I just wanted to point out that we'll be thinking about and talking about all of these different aspects, all these different trends, the trend towards streaming, the trend towards binge watching and certain release schedules. As we think about on the last slide, our ultimate question, which is what are the implications of all of this for how shows are written, how they're produced, how they are tested by marketing researchers, how they're marketed, how they're distributed. In short, the question is, what are the implications of all this for how the industry creates the new TV addiction?
Well, the poll results are in. I feel like, so here we have our talk show moment. The results are in. So for sure, vast majority of you are okay with the episodic drip, the weekly drip, right? So 58%, more than half. But there are a solid quarter of attendees that really wish you could binge all the episodes in one sitting. So there's definitely a group of you that would prefer to do that. And then it's 10% or less for the waiting until all the episodes are available, and then even a smaller percentage of you that won't commit to watching until the show's renewed for the next season. So that was a fun poll. Thank you for participating in that. All right.
And now back to you, Audra.
Okay, thank you. Oh my gosh, these questions are huge. We can't solve world peace in 20 minutes, but we can sure try. Let's try to tackle them. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce two powerhouse television executives who have had a front row seat to this television content evolution, and it will be fantastic to hear their perspectives. So if we could bring up onto the screen, let's bring up Rachel, let's bring up Nkechi. Fantastic, here we go. So in no particular order, Nkechi Okoro-Carroll is the showrunner and executive producer of the hit show All American on the CW, as well as the spinoff All American Homecoming. All American premiered back in October of 2018, and they're currently producing season 4, right? Season 4, oh my gosh, which is set to premiere this month, October 25th. Prior to All American, Nkechi was co-executive producer on the drama series The Resident and Rosewood. Her other television producing credits include Bones and The Finder. And last but certainly not least, Nkechi is in an exclusive multi-year overall deal with Warner Brothers Studios. Welcome to Nkechi.
Thank you so much. I feel like you should be my hype woman that goes everywhere with me. That was beautiful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And anytime, I can shout it from the rooftops. Next up, Rachel Olshan Wilson is the co-founder and partner at Dean Devlin's Electric Entertainment and has been with the company since its inception in 2001. Rachel is an executive producer of Leverage Redemption, which premiered on Amazon's IMDb TV in July of this year. She is also exec producer of the CW's The Outpost, which premiered its 4th season in July of this year. So clearly, July was a busy month for Rachel. Rachel was a co-producer and then co-executive producer when Leverage was on TNT for 5 seasons. And she was also co-executive producer of the TNT drama series, The Librarians, starring Noah Wyle and Rebecca Romaine. Welcome, Rachel.
Thanks, Audra. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much to both of you for spending some time with me today. I am sure you both have a line forming outside your office. You guys have a lot on your plate. Oh my God. I have some questions, that we can use to get the panel discussion started. I mean, there's so many directions we can go. And I know that the next, 20-ish minutes are going to fly by. So let's start with this one. Streaming's in the spotlight, right? You've got the SVODs for the subscriptions. You've got the AVODs for the advertising supported. You've got TVODs for transactional video on demand, right? All the VODs. But what's happening to linear? So the question for Nkechi first, are broadcast networks still important to you as a creator?
Personally, yes, I am a huge sort of network broadcast TV fan. I mean, I still watch General Hospital every day, and that is real. And so I know it's crazy, but I love it. And also everything I'm sort of working on right now and the shows I'm creating still live in the linear world. And yes, they've had amazing second windows on streaming services, but I don't know. I think it's something about the way I grew up, and there's something about the anticipation of having to wait, another week for that Dawson's Creek episode to drop, or that, whatever that there's a nostalgia there that I think that there is still a world for linear. And also I do believe the type of content we're seeing on linear platforms versus streaming, there is a slight difference to them. And so just in terms of pacing, in terms of scope, in terms of those sort of things. And so I feel like we're in this time where we're shifting, right? It's like streaming is the new fancy thing. And of course, kids are like, give me everything right now. And so they're really driving that consumption. But I think we're actually going to balance out, and we're going to figure out there's sort of like an audience for linear, there's an audience for streaming, there's going to be some overlap in the middle. But I do believe, and bear in mind, I also believe in like unicorns and fairies and that sort of thing. So this might just be my optimism, but I honestly believe that there will always be a demand for linear platforms and content on linear platforms. I think the nature of it is always going to be shifting and evolving as these new platforms. Now it's streaming, in a few years it might be something else. And so I think we're just going to be constantly in a state of evolution in this industry. But I absolutely believe there is still merit and a need for linear content.
Rachel, to you, what are your thoughts on this?
Obviously, my heart is in AVOD right now because we just launched our new show on Amazon's IMDb. But what's interesting is I think when we work on projects in our company, it depends where the opportunity is going to be and where the show fits, right? So we have a show on CW, that's linear. We have our show on AVOD. So I agree that there's an opportunity for all of it. We're getting really excited about the AVOD space though, which is, for me personally, we've been talking about this all across, the nostalgia of watching television the way we all used to watch it with commercials. I know the young people don't want to hear that, but I actually prefer it. Even before we were on IMDb TV, I was watching it. I'd keep it on in my room, and there was something about it that felt good. So I think it's kind of exciting to be in that space again. I think it's also exciting for the advertisers, and then to go, I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, but to take it one step further, the opportunities for product integration within the shows in coordination with the ads that are found on the platform as well. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, Rachel. And we are definitely going to dig into that for sure in just a couple of minutes. For the past few years, we've all experienced the streaming wars, but now that the majority of media companies have their own streaming platform, or the company like purposely decided not to have one, the streaming wars have really evolved into the war for IP and content and franchises, which leads me to the million or billion, I've been practicing the pinky, $1 billion question. How do you know when you have a good idea?
I'd say short answer, you don't. I mean, that's the honest answer. All you can do as content creators is try to make the best product that you can. And we're very proud of our shows, but specifically, we rebooted Leverage. The original Leverage ran for 5 seasons on TNT. We had a huge fan base. People loved the show. We were always trying to figure out how to bring it back. And then this opportunity presented itself. My boss, Dean Devlin, talked to Amazon's IMDb TV. They were totally excited about the idea. Meanwhile, we were keeping in touch with the actors through all those years, 8 years. And we're lucky we were able to bring it all back together, and even the writers and everything. So I feel like we did hit gold with the original. And I feel like we did also with this reboot, although one of the main differences between the original being on TNT and checking ratings, we don't have ratings on IMDb TV. It's all, internal numbers that Amazon has, they're not shared. So, but we know we did well. You watch the fan chatter. But so the short answer is you never know. You just hope and pray, and you work hard to create something that you love and that hopefully will find an audience.
I'm sitting here nodding so viciously because I 100% agree with everything Rachel said. And by the way, I'm one of those diehard fans that was so excited at the reboot of Leverage. And so I can personally testify to what Rachel's talking about. But she's absolutely correct. I think one of the things I tell my mentees often, and I tell my writers on my shows as they're developing their own projects, and I'm like, if you're trying to find the next big thing, or you're trying to hit some target for either streaming or linear, wherever it's for, that is the quickest way to frustrate yourself and likely fail, because the truth is, we don't know. We may think we know, Squid Game's the big thing right now. So everyone's running out trying to find their Squid Game. But 2 minutes ago, they were trying to find Ted Lasso. Like, you just don't know. And so it's so important as creatives that you make the show you're passionate about. You make the show, the brand for my production company is that we create content that leaves the world a little bit of a better place than how we found it. So for me, that's how I judge the IP I go after. That's how I judge the original content I go after. I'm like, would watching this leave that person a little bit better than when they tuned in? If the answer is yes, okay, let's dig into it. If it's a narrative that I feel like I have a new spin on, or there's something I can contribute to the conversation, or I know as an avid TV watcher, it would make me want to throw my shoe at the screen, I'm like, yes, because I do that all the time. I talk to the characters like they're real. I throw shoes at the screen. It's a whole situation. And so if the project makes me want to do that, then I'm like, okay, whether or not it gets the ratings, whether or not the audience tunes in, whether or not they find it. I mean, with so many scripted shows out right now, no one is getting the numbers they used to get back in the 80s and 90s, because there's just so much. The whole water cooler moment is kind of dissipated, because it's like, someone's like, oh my gosh, you have to watch this. And I'm like, oh, I need to add it to the list and then wait till summer and find time to binge it. And it's a beautiful thing as a creative to know that there's so many platforms to sell projects to. But it's hard to know if, this is going to be the one that makes everyone start talking about it. So you just have to create that project that you're passionate about, that feels good. And, fingers crossed it finds its audience, or it lands on a platform where they're willing to give it time to find its audience, because they too believe in the project and are passionate about it.
Yeah, that's right. Rachel, you mentioned Leverage Redemption. Nkechi, you're in the thick of it right now with the reboot of Life Goes On. And I'd love to hear from you, what creative risks or, creative license do you have, talking about a show that leaves you better at the end than you were at the beginning, right? That one absolutely hits the nail on the head. So I'd love to know, what is that creative license, that you have with a reboot of such a beloved series, compared to that process of developing a series from scratch that's coming from your own heart and mind?
Well, when you take on an iconic show like Life Goes On, my initial thought was no. Like, I loved it so much growing up. I'm like, who didn't? Like, Corky single-handedly made us all feel better about the world. And I was such a fan of Michael Braverman's and the just genius behind creating the show, the way it was written. It was so beautifully slice of life and kind of showed us all the best of us, right? And so I was like, I kind of have no business touching this. Maybe I should just go watch reruns on DVDs and like chill out. But it was something that was very, very important to me. And, I make no secret about the fact that you can always find sort of a piece of me or a piece of my family in the shows we do. And my youngest son is a special needs son. And I was like, he deserves to be the A story. He deserves to know that we can create content around his wonderful world, and other special needs kids and their wonderful world are also worthy of being the A story. And that was something that Life Goes On did for, kids with Down syndrome. And so it was like, okay, well, how do I honor the essence of that show and what it did, but contribute something new to the conversation, or put a different spin on it. But it's something I never would have done had I not picked up the phone, called Michael Braverman, and been like, hi, This is what I want to do. This is my new spin on it. If you say no, I will go back to my corner and mind my business, like with all respect. And he, bless his heart, was just like, I love it. I'm so excited that 30 years later, you're even inspired to continue the story in this way. And he gave me complete carte blanche. And he was like, it is your show now. And so he was like, if you want to call me, call me. He's like, if you don't want to call me, I'm going to be happy to watch it every week with everyone else. It was such a beautiful creative license that he gave me. But I will always honor the essence and spirit of the original show, because that was a show that changed my life. And so it's a fine balance, but you find it. And again, it goes back to what Rachel and I were saying for your last question, is it comes down to the passion. It's the right project and you're passionate about it, you're going to find the right take on it that honors what the original show was. Otherwise, you might as well just do a brand new show.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And Tom, did you want to chime in for a second?
Yeah, I had a thought, going the answers to both this question and the last question sort of tie in together in that, with the advent and the rise of streaming and those organizations' willingness to take more risk, I think, either because that's just in their nature or because they have a lot of work to do to fill their pipelines. They are willing to pick up a lot of ideas without going through the traditional testing that market researchers like us have done. So that is, which is not music to our ears, but that is, that's part of a, sort of a trend. But, another part of the idea of, how do you know if you have an idea? It's okay. I think the industry is increasingly decided that it's okay to go to ideas that have proven that they have a passionate fan base or they have resonated with someone in the past, and bringing them back or spinning off a piece of a piece of that IP and extending it into new areas. So I think both of those trends sort of speak to the comments that both Rachel and Getty were making in each of your last two questions.
Yeah, evangelizing a new IP and a franchise to new generations. It just keeps it going. It's the Star Wars, Star Trek. It's there's James Bond. I mean, how many of these franchises have been around for multiple generations, right? And it just keeps on going. But with a unique spin, for the next generation, I think it's so special. So taking a turn, here we go. Advertising revenue. I know this is such a hot topic. The advertising revenue is coming from a lot of different places now, not just traditional 30 and 60-second ads, during act breaks. So as fans and viewers, we have definitely noticed how brands are getting more involved with scripted content. Their involvement is starting much earlier in the creative process as well. Now, it seems like a generation ago when Snapple was fully integrated into an episode of 30 Rock. And I looked it up because I was like, what year was that? It was 2006. Like what? Anyway, and still you can see the impact it had on me, right? That one episode. So I would love to learn more about what that process has been like for you recently. Rachel, why don't we start with you?
I'm such a geek about this because I'm very involved in, I don't even use the term product placement anymore. We call it product integration because it's so much more than me holding up my Dunkin' Donuts cup and taking a sip. It's actually working with the writing staff and your directors to incorporate the brands into the story. So especially on a show that's on an AVOD platform, I mean, we have to figure out, you're not getting the same amount of money selling an ad on IMDb TV's AVOD platform that's new as you would on an ABC show or CW or whatever. So you've got to come up with creative ways. And it's not obviously us as the show creators doing this. This is Amazon's ad sales job and everything. But the reality is it's important to us too, because we can get some money to help pay for the show. So we embrace product integration. Luckily, my boss, Dean, all the writers we work with, the directors, the actors, everybody has been so cool about it and embracing it. And we like to do it in a very organic way so that you don't knock the audience out of the show. Nobody wants to be advertised to. So you have to figure out really fun and creative ways, just like they did with the Snapple on 30 Rock. You know, everybody was talking about that. It was so funny. And luckily our show Leverage has a lot of opportunities for the different categories, whether it's technology, automotive, like what brand, you know, food products. And the tone of our show is so unique in that we talk about very serious topics, but we have a really cool, funny tone to the show too.
Right.
So we can figure out these cool ways to do these seamless integrations. We just did one on Leverage Redemption. It was the Halloween episode. And believe it or not, Charmin toilet paper approached us about doing a product integration. Now, at first, anyone in the right mind would say, okay, how do we do an active integration of toilet paper? It's not what you think. The writers came up with a really clever way. Because it was a Halloween episode, we added a scene where one of our characters is decorating the headquarters with Halloween decorations. And then the other character is coming in with a mummy that was wrapped in toilet paper and is like, what are you doing? This is over the top and you're wasting the good stuff. And then it was a verbal note to self, don't use the Charmin on the Halloween decorations. So we got a verbal integration of toilet paper into an episode of Leverage. Everybody was thrilled and we were excited about it. You know, you have fun with it. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity. And I do love talking about this stuff, especially when your writing staff can have fun with it. Your actors don't push back, but it's finding the balance. It's finding the balance because you don't want to turn off the fans.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Akechi, what have you guys done?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Rachel, and I feel like I'm going to be saying that all day. I completely agree with Rachel. We also prefer to refer to it as product integration, because if we're integrating it into the storylines, if we're integrating it organically into the show, then it doesn't feel like we're sort of like beating our viewers over the head, right? It feels like, oh, it really is just an extension of the show. And so we've been incredibly lucky in terms of the product integrations we've done, because they've all come about so organically. It's, we do a lot of product integration with Microsoft. We're a teen show. They're in school. They're on social media. They literally live on phones, tablets, surfaces, all of the above. And so it's been fantastic working with them. And the CW has an amazing sort of branded content division that really works with us and comes to us and be like, hey, we have an opportunity for this. And what I love about the partnership is if it's something that does not feel organic to the show, there's never this push of, but money, but they're like, cool, no problem. We'll find another show, because they know that when it's something that my writers and I can organically integrate into the show, we'll go full steam ahead. And so, we've done everything from Microsoft to one of our big episodes that was around social justice and was sort of honoring Breonna Taylor. And we had our fictitious version of that character and did a sort of flowers for Tamika social justice event that was about sort of empowering Black women. And we ended up doing a product integration with Instagram in that episode. And everyone was like, I can't believe you're doing a product integration in this super important social justice episode. But I'm like, where else would the video that they shot at that event live? Where else would her podcast post about? It was so organic. I'm like, it's what I would have done in real life. The first thing I would have done would have been put up the reels on Instagram and everything. So why don't we? And it was such a beautiful integration that it didn't even feel like it was sort of paid integration. It just felt like it was part of the storyline. And, Instagram is part of our lives. And so we love doing opportunities like that, because A, it does bring revenue into the show so that we can continue to make the show everyone loves. And B, I think it also gives it an actual more authentic real life, because it's the tools we would have been using in real life anyway.
Yep, that's absolutely right. So closing thoughts here in the last 30 seconds, it sounds like, it's brands and advertisers, they can really get involved at any point in the creative process, and the writers in the creative process, just they can do anything, right? It's like no holds barred these days on what's possible, because it's not just, the show itself. It can be into the ad break. It can be an extension of the show. It can be a separate touch point, all kinds of things. I am so appreciative to both of you for your time today. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Audra. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.